Hi, I'm Bruce Maquire, and I'm running for City Commission, Seat 1, in the town of St. Augustine. And I would really appreciate your vote. And I want to clarify and explain a little bit about the issues upon which I'm running. One of the biggest issues that seems to be brought out by all the candidates is historical preservation. And I listed that as number one on my campaign agenda, but I don't really envision historical preservation as an issue. I see historical preservation as a lifestyle in St. Augustine, not something to be campaigned on every 2 years. It's the way we live and the way we look at things and the way we develop our community. Secondly, though, is the real issue as I see it is the way our city government is spending its money. It's not the fact that they're raising or not raising money, it's how they're spending it and what venues do they put it and what are they focusing on in the short term and the long term. And that's what I'd like to talk about today during this conversation.
All right. Thank you. Peter, would you like to begin?
Well, let's start with, you appeared before the City Commission on Monday night and spoke about spending the money in the on the VIC and the Picasso exhibit. Would you share with us your views on that, whether the Commission did the right thing, and you have the floor.
No, the Commission, I believe, did not do the right thing. And let's separate two issues out here. One is the Picasso. I clarified my position there. I am what you call a small art collector. I have 8 or 10 pieces, not of real high value, but more than the average person. I love art. The family I'm married into are all artists, going back several hundred years. So we are art, not art friendly, but we are art enthusiasts. We believe in art. And I believe society needs to develop art programs. Picasso is a great example, especially coming from Malaga. However, the real question here is $1.4 million. Is it prudent to spend this much money on a building, on an upgrade, on an operation for a 3-month period? And that's where I disagree. My premise is we have too many projects throughout the city of St. Augustine that need to be developed, enhanced, and improved. And if you prioritize all these projects out, I don't see Picasso very high on the list. I see other projects that the city's been putting off for 5, 10, 15 years that need to be worked on and developed. And that's the reason I'm opposed against it. For example, this morning I got a phone call from a citizen, and her comment was very simple. We have a Leitner Museum which houses art. Why don't we expand and improve the Leitner Museum? The Leitner Museum has a lot of problems infrastructure-wise, and if we're going to invest $1 million into improving something, let's take a historical building that needs improvement, not delay that, and it already has art inside. Make it into the Class A art facility in St. Augustine.
You mentioned there are too many other projects. Could you elaborate on what some of those you consider to be more important might be?
In 2005, the City Commission exited out, removed the garden club from the old Waterworks building on San Marco. The statement at that time by the mayor and the City Commission was that they were going to renovate and rebuild the Waterworks building and turn it into a museum. And they could not do that with the garden club inside. The building is old, and they said it is structurally incapable of housing any more operations. The garden club maintained the building for years and years. They were willing to take on the waterworks as a project and raise money and invest their money into the waterworks and rebuild it. But the city said, no, we want to make it into a museum. It's been sitting there since 2005 with a fence around it. 5 years ago, or maybe 8 years ago, I didn't look up the actual date, a campaign commitment was made by one commissioner that Maria Sanchez Lake would be dredged out. I don't know if you know it, but every summer we have a lot of dead fish floating around Maria Sanchez Lake because there's so much sludge, debris, and other hazardous byproducts in the bottom of the lake. It needs to be dredged as a health issue. It has yet been touched. The argument is that they could not find a place to put the dredge material. However, if you look at the dredging going on at the marina, they take that dredging, put it on a barge, take it around the waterway over to the ramp, boat ramp at the lighthouse, and put it into dump trucks and haul it off someplace. So the fact that they say they couldn't find a dumping issue really came down to a cost of money. We don't have the money to do something like that. You have brick streets throughout our historical area, beautiful brick streets that driving down it, it's like driving down a dirt road full of potholes. You have sidewalks, and you cannot count the number of sidewalks inside the city that are cracked, broken, and are hazardous. I mean, safety issues for people walking on them because of the way they're shaped. They all need replacement. Okay, I could go on.
Thank you.
Let me just, excuse me for
Yes.
leave for a second. The argument that the mayor made on that is that we'll get our money back because it'll be in tourist revenue and he didn't use this word, but heads on beds kind of stuff. How do you counter the mayor's argument that?
I don't believe that's the case. First of all, there was no documentation to show that they would get the money back. If he said we get 7 million visitors a year, I think it's closer to 6 million, but immaterial, 6-7 million visitors. To bring in $1.4 million to get our money back, they got to bring in thousands of people every day at $8 a clip.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? For the local residents, they may go once. So a family of 4 goes in, they spend $32, they won't go back again, especially in that 3-month period. To turn this into a facility that's going to generate money, extra money, by bringing in more people, what he's really saying is that this exhibit alone, this building alone, and the activities we possibly could put in there would generate more money than the Castillo. Will bring more money, bring in more people than the alligator farm. And yet the documentation they showed, all it says is we have a pro forma. No one questioned who generated the numbers or the numbers. In the classic pro forma, I've done plenty of pro formas. The pro forma primarily is designed to show a cash flow, a movement of money necessary to be able to justify the acquisition. Okay? It doesn't validate if the money is going to be there. You have to do a study and analysis of the market to see if the market is going to support what the pro forma says you need. I didn't see an analysis. I didn't see any breakout. He mentioned the, the Baseball Hall of Fame exhibit. Mm-hmm. One exhibit, okay, one exhibit. One person stood up and talked about the amphitheater. The amphitheater was dying and dying and dying. I was a commissioner when we approved the money for the amphitheater. We caught a lot of flack, a lot of flack. And it has turned into a Class A project. The difference between the amphitheater and what he's talking about is there is a large, tremendously large touring program for musicians around the country. You can open the doors of a small amphitheater and musicians everywhere will be dying to come in. May not be the Class A, but you can fill up the amphitheater every night if you wanted to do so. You don't have a touring operation of art exhibits that can move in all the time from a continuous flow to justify upgrading a building. If you want to upgrade a building that's currently being used for art. Put it into the Lightner, because in a few months or a few years, they're going to have to turn around and put money into the Lightner anyway. So put it in now. If you want Picasso, put it into the Lightner. The VIC is not the proper way to expend the money.
Okay, Peter and Marco?
Yeah. I just wanted to follow up on that. Why do you think the Lightner was not considered? Because I got a phone call similar to yours today too.
I can only reiterate what Joe Bowl said. It's a legacy. The VIC is a legacy.
So
And
1938 WPA building
Yes.
that does not have the kind of security. I mean, they have to put all these upgrades into it. The Lightner couldn't be considered.
I don't know why they didn't. I never asked why they couldn't do the Lightner. The VIC was built for one purpose, and that's a Visitors Information Center. Recently, the VIC aspect of the building has been shoved to a corner. and now we're looking at it for a different venue. So the real issue is what's happened to our VIC? Are we even going to have one when this is all over? Are we going to lose the ability to have an information center? And nobody's really addressed this issue of what happens following on to that element of our community that was so important for so many years.
Can you talk about how you feel about the city's relationship with downtown businesses? How that should change? Should it change? What are your thoughts?
It's one of my issues, communications
Yeah.
between the city and the people, the businesses and the residential community. You're all familiar with the King Street project, what happened there. I took the initiative, led the effort, and in 8 days we suspended a project that could have devastated King Street. People say, well, that's a business-oriented issue that you addressed, and it was not a business-oriented issue. Business is one element. St. Augustine is such a small, physically confined space. We're talking about the downtown area. Anything you do to the streets, to the movement of traffic, affects everybody. What they were proposing was to virtually bring King Street to a standstill because of heavy traffic, which meant you would have an overflow into the residential communities. The residential communities didn't even know the issue existed. Ergo the problem, communication. In this particular case, the city did not communicate to anybody in the community, residential or business, that this was getting ready to happen until Monday before the following Monday when they were supposed to start construction. And that's when DOT brought it to our attention. So we were left out of the loop. This issue on Riberia Street, a very needed infrastructure project of rebuilding that whole system down there. But when it started, people on King Street didn't know what was going on because the people were not advised. Avenida Menendez, they looked at this grant to improve connectivity between the Castillo and the downtown area. Again, the issue is not improving connectivity, it was the impact that the project was going to have on the community. The way they were devising, reducing down a 4-lane system to a 2-lane system would have restricted traffic so badly that Anastasia Island would have had an extreme negative impact. But that was never brought to Anastasia Island to discuss. Nobody on the island even knew it until I brought it out, and I personally delivered over 200 letters door to door for the entire Anastasia Boulevard down past the alligator farm. I was the one that brought them together, and people were astonished this was getting ready to happen on Avenida. They didn't realize the impact it was having on Anastasia because nobody thought about issues beyond the streets of Avenida Menendez. And it would have devastated them. And the comment, again, from one of the commissioners was, we don't want through traffic passing down through St. Augustine. We want them to go around St. Augustine on 312. That's almost a quote. Now, I can tell you, traffic, businesses on Anastasia Boulevard rely on through traffic crossing that bridge, both directions. And if you kill that traffic flow, it's going to destroy Anastasia Boulevard. The real issue should have been, how can we build up Anastasia Boulevard as a definable section element of St. Augustine and at the same time improve connectivity with the Castillo. But they tried to use the Avenida as a venue to improve connectivity, and that wasn't the real issue, because what they really were doing was reducing traffic and dedicating a single lane to 14 carriages a day. 17,000 cars travel between the Bridge of Lions down St. Marco, and they wanted to take one lane away out of that 17 and give it to 14 carriages. Didn't make sense. I could not understand it.
I think we wrote about that.
Yes, you did.
I think we opined about that. Can you talk a little bit about your views on the Gallimore Center, and now that the city has all of it back with the help from the county?
Well, when I was a county commissioner, we talked about the Gallimore Center. And this is long before I moved into St. Augustine. I grew up in St. Augustine, Volano Beach, St. Johns County, all my life. There has always been this conflict between the county and the city. Matter of fact, statewide, there's always some conflict between every county and every city. The issue here was the city rightfully wanted the county to work on the Gallimore Center. The county, their whole attitude was, it's in the city. You know, they pay taxes, let them take care of it. The county needs to recognize that it has a responsibility across the board, regardless of the city limits of any community, to provide equal services, equal facilities everywhere. And when I was a commissioner, we had decided on 3 swimming pool facilities, one in the Northeast, one in the Northwest, and one in St. Augustine. We built one in St. Augustine, but that still didn't solve the need for the Gallimore Center. The Gallimore Center should have been resolved 5 years ago. It should have been approved by the county. Now with the city, we need to improve it. That's all I can say. But that's another funding issue. Where are we going to get the money? We could have taken that 1.4 and provided it. And my whole issue with the money, let me clarify this. My whole issue with the way the city spends the money, I'm not against Picasso. I'm not against a marina. I'm not against some of these other issues. What I am saying is that as I prioritize projects, Picasso is not the highest. Gallimore Center is up there. You know, where do the high schools train their swimmers? It's always been the Gallimore Center, always. They would take turns, or they would share the pool together to train their swimmers. You know, that is unconscionable to me. We should be providing facilities. Now, I don't want to get into the school board versus the county versus the city. The real issue is we need to provide facilities. And in this particular case, we had a perfectly good Gallimore Center, and they let it go to waste. We need to fix it up.
I'll ask another question if nobody else is going to jump in. A lot of these things are tied to the 450th, the Florida 500th, and one of your things, and I think it's in here about the beyond the celebrations and focus on the residents. Could you expand on your views of how you think the city or what the city should be doing for the 450th?
Well, this is a deep one, and I'll try to cut it as close as short as I can. First of all, you know, almost 50 years ago we had a 400 celebration. I don't see anybody going back at the city level and saying, what did we do there that was so successful? What did we do there that was minimal expense yet produced a tremendous draw? What did we do there that was focused on the people, the residents of the community, rather than trying to draw somebody from wherever else to come in and visit based on glitz and glamour? Nobody's addressing those issues. If you look at what's happening now, all of the focus seems to be on let's make this big event. It's like the Olympics, and we're not in the Olympics. But yet they want this big event that's going to be seen worldwide and generate all the stuff for St. Augustine, and I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't believe they're going to be able to create it. Coca-Cola is not going to come in and put in money into St. Augustine the way they do to the Olympics. It's not going to happen because we're not going to get the draw. The real 450th celebration ought to start with a review of the 400th. Next, it ought to go to the people. What do the residents want to do to celebrate because it's their city? However we design a celebration, people will come from the outside to come here. They're not going to stay away because we don't have a fantastic art center. They're going to come because we are putting together a nice project based on citizens and residents. We should be putting now, we are getting these sign-ups from people, local businesses where they are partners and they donate $200. But the real issue is why don't we turn the majority of the project planning over to the Visitors and Convention Bureau? That's right down their alley. Their whole business is to bring in activities and tourists. Let's turn it over to them. Instead of spending city money, we can spend VCB money, which is shared by a lot more people. The VCB can use their talents. 4 weeks ago, I was at a city staff member's office. I'm not gonna say who. But I was sitting there talking about some issues, and there's a stack of papers about 8 inches high on his desk. And I said, what's this? He said, that's Picasso. What are you doing? He said, well, the majority of my time is spent putting together this Picasso event. City staff spending more time on celebration events, which is a short-term glamour project, and they're letting the short-term necessities slide. They're letting the long-term necessities slide. If you look at St. Augustine, our local business activity is the lifeblood of our community. However, our social community, the lifeblood of our social aspect, are the neighborhoods. The city, I believe, is so focused, because of the direction they're being told to go, they're so focused on producing the biggest, best, most glamorous 450th that they're overlooking the needs, the necessities of the residential community, the business community, the infrastructure. They're not going to solve these problems, and my concern is, as they build forward to this, this dedication to this big glamour is going to increase. The commitment to the city's immediate needs and necessities are going to take a backseat by design. And when it's all over, we're not going to have the money to fix the things that need to be fixed, because we put it into a big screen TV.
That's good. My question, and you may be more familiar with this than am I. Margot and I were actually chatting about this morning. So the 1.4 mil is not a big deal. We just borrow it from our reserves and pay it back. Wasn't part of the King Street project borrowed from reserves? Do you know if
They were going to, primarily it was DOT money.
on King Street? Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned in this situation, and also once again, I think we wrote an opinion about what we thought the city was doing with the M&M market. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I'll talk about M&M market, but let me go back to your 1.4 being not a big deal. It is a big deal. Okay, it is. People tend to, I know you were. People tend to think, well, we've got the cash sitting here, let's use it. Well, first of all, it's in reserves. And what's the purpose of reserves? It's for emergency funding, necessary projects that come up that you were not expecting that has to be done. If we had a hurricane come up with severe flooding, trees down everywhere, if we deplete our reserves, where are we going to get the money? Okay? So we're reaching into our bank account, our safety net, to produce a project that does, and I'll say this clearly, does not benefit the community nearly with respect to the needs and necessities as does all the other projects that are being ignored. Okay? That's the number one issue.
All right.
Okay, now M&M market.
Let me turn it around a little bit on you.
Okay.
M&M market. One of the things you're talking about is the city's need to improve neighborhoods and work better. Wasn't that a move that would certainly help improve the safety and the functionality of the social networking of the community?
If you're asking me if the end justifies the means, no, it's not. Okay, what you're really saying is we removed the problem, but by doing it, we took the most expensive possible way to do it. Does that justify it? We could have taken $400,000. You could have rented the end unit from this guy for $1,000 a month and put a policeman down there on duty for 10 years for $400,000. You know, why buy it? You didn't have to buy it. There was a problem, big problem, that needed to be corrected. I think the first question you ask is, how did the city allow the problem to develop to the point it did develop? That's the first issue. Secondly, why do we have to buy a piece of property to resolve it? Couldn't we take the property and put some type of restriction, restriction of police protection on that area? We could have put people in the community on a watch. I mean, there are other ways that we could have solved the problem that we had down there. Purchasing was not the only way to do it, but it was the most expensive way. Okay? Now we've got a property that we've invested $400,000 in that by any stretch of the imagination If it pulls 200,000 on the free market, I'll apologize for going that high. Okay?
Yeah.
It was a spur of the moment decision. It was not a thought out decision. They didn't sit down and say, well, gee, what are we going to do this? What are we going to do with this after we buy it? No one had an answer. It doesn't matter, let's buy it anyway. They didn't analyze the situation, and they should have.
Yeah. I think the thought was that a family would purchase it and reopen it for the same purpose or some iteration of that.
But don't we have regulations, laws? Don't we have a police force? Don't we have zoning issues? You know, if the answer to every legal problem is buy it, then we're in trouble.
Go.
Let me ask you a question. You've married into a very successful, very prominent family. I assume that anything that involves the Whetstone family you will not be involved in?
Correct.
So I know you've taken a stance on the marina expansion is not necessary. Is it not true that the Whetstone family owns a marina?
It does, and I'm glad you brought this one up, because this is an issue a lot of people ask questions about. So I'll start off by saying, if I really were going to support the Whetstones at a marina, and Virginia's marina is a small marina, it's about a fourth the size of the city marina. It is limited by regulation to a certain number of spaces for permanent boats and a certain number of spaces for transient boats. There is no gasoline sold there. She doesn't want it. She never asked for it. So is there a competition? Not really, because the boats that we bring in are not the typical boat that the city marina attracts. Okay? Is there a benefit either way if the marina is approved or not approved? The benefit is approval. If the city marina is approved, there is no justification that the city can offer up to disapprove Virginia expanding her marina under the same concept. So if you ask me if there's a basis for going in the direction I'm going, no, it's just the opposite. If the city says we want to expand it because we need a breakwater, Virginia needs a breakwater. If we need more boats, more slips because of a single fishing tournament, that was their justification to the PZV. A single fishing tournament, we need more slips. Virginia needs more slips for the same fishing tournament. So whatever justification the city uses to expand their marina, Virginia's marina, a quarter of the size across the way, has the same issues that the city has. Exactly the same issues. The water that damages their docks damages Virginia's docks. So, would she benefit if the marina's turned down? No, it'll hurt because she won't be able to expand either. Number one. Number two, why am I opposed to it? I'm opposed, number one, because I don't believe the city should be competing with local business at all. I'm opposed to the city trying to get into the wedding venue locations with the VIC. There are venues out here where the local businesses survive off of wedding venues. And now the city, they see a gold mine and they want to jump in and take away some of the business. The reason I'm opposed, Pete, and it's a good question, the reason I'm opposed is city does not have the expenses that a local business does. They don't pay taxes, they don't have the insurance cost. They have insurance, but not the same magnitude of cost that a local business does. And truthfully, when I went to the PZB and I saw the city apply for a liquor license for the VIC, they applied for the ability to use the VIC for conventions and weddings. I didn't see a single voice of opposition from the VCB at all, from the PZB. Which tells me that the government tends to treat itself differently than it treats private citizens, local businesses. And I believe that's wrong. Secondly, the government can operate cheaper than local businesses. So it's easier to undercut local businesses. But then the third issue, and it always boils down to this: do we need an expansion? Have you checked the vacancy rate for the marina? The only time it's full is the fishing tournament. Other than that, it's never full.
Okay. My original question, I'm just reframe it. Would it not appear to be a conflict of interest if you were taking a side on an issue in which your wife's family had a financial interest? They obviously have a financial interest in the marina. And could that not be seen by some as a conflict of interest?
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it could be. As an appearance, definitely yes. If I have a business and the city has a business, obviously it's going to appear as a conflict of interest. Virginia's marina is pretty well full, and they have a couple of empty slips, but for the most part, it's pretty full. So it's not that she's struggling on the marina side and I need more business. It's because I can tell you right now, Virginia wants to expand her marina. She wants, from that perspective, she wants the city to succeed so she can go in immediately and ask for the exact same issue.
I guess I'll rephrase it. Will you recuse
Yes,
yourself
I
from
will.
any issue that gave including the expansion of the marina, which gave the appearance of a conflict with your wife's family?
Yeah, if that was a real issue, yeah, I didn't catch that part. Yes, I'll recuse myself.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I did at the county level, and I will do it at this level.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So beyond 450th and marinas, and I read over your information, and you know, the residential neighborhoods, protecting the neighborhoods. What is your view on the FSDB situation with Melmar Terrace?
I believe the city didn't take strong enough stance against eminent domain. I do not believe, let me change that. Eminent domain is one of the most powerful forces and authorities any government has. Most powerful. And it's not to be taken lightly. And it's not to be passed lightly. As the county commissioner, we turned down numerous eminent domain requests by CDCs and other organizations that wanted the ability to do that. And we refused to do that. I firmly do not believe that any organization that is not represented by an elected body should have eminent domain authority. I don't. I don't believe that I can, you can, or Peter can, or anybody can create a board, give that board eminent domain authority, and then that board turn around and say, well, we represent the people. No, you don't, because the people did not elect you. I think the city should have stood up with a stronger stance and opposed eminent domain. Now, if FSDB wants to eminent domain in the rest of the state, they can do it. But they should not have been allowed to do it inside the city of St. Augustine.
You know, even with that 10-year restriction?
Even with the 10-year restriction.
Okay. So you had been on the commission. That settlement probably wouldn't have,
If I'd been on the commission,
probably wouldn't have worked.
yeah, I would have, had I been on the commission, I would have fought the state a lot harder. And I don't believe our commissioners fought hard enough. I think they went over there ready to compromise. And that's what they did. And let's talk reality. You know, you all know this. Politics is what you make out of it. If I go in and say to you, Representative, if you do this, we will make sure that our whole city will turn against you. And guess what that politician's going to do? He's going to back down. But if I go in and say, hey, look, you know, I don't want to squabble, but let's compromise, and that's what he's going to do too. I believe we should have gone in with a stronger stance to protect our neighborhoods.
Well, the argument against it was, and the other side was that it was Bill Proctor's last term. He was a committee chairman, apparently very well liked and respected, and that you heard the city attorney saying that we can do anything we want, but he's in his last term, and it's going to be very hard to overturn his wishes. As it turned out, the city attorney was correct.
The city attorney's position, well, yeah, probably a legal position, it's hard to overturn it.
No, he was arguing that the dynamics of the legislature, with somebody who's a committee chairman his last term, and a well-respected guy, as Proctor presumably was, very hard to get the legislature to vote against something when it is a local issue by an outgoing.
And Peter, I recognize that, and I don't want to try to pick at that. My whole point was, I don't believe eminent domain should have been given to a private institution, and I believe the city should have gone to greater lengths to protect the neighborhood. Period. That's the bottom line.
I have one more, and a lot of discussion. Part of the 450th, part of the heritage of St. Augustine is the Civil Rights Museum. Have one, there's talk of two, talk of three now. How do you think that the city, or what would you believe is the best way for the city to proceed with these disparate, not desperate, but disparate groups working toward their own end? What is your view?
You know, that brings up a good question. If we're going to spend $1.4 million for Picasso, how is the city going to turn down a request for a civil rights museum? How can they do that? How are they going to go to the people who are trying to develop this museum and say, I'm sorry, your project is not as important as Picasso?
Or pick one or two of the three, or none of the three, or any of the three.
But you know that they're going to come to the city and ask for money. They are. The museums, I was a chairman, matter of fact, for the Florida Agricultural Museum, and I was on their board for years. We did a study, because we were going to do a fundraiser. We needed to raise $5 million. And this is 15 years ago. We did a study, and we found out that there's only about 3 or 4 real museums throughout the United States that survive on revenues from the museum itself. Every other museum survives only because the government subsidizes it. So it's going to happen. Okay? So when the museum is built, and if you're going to build it, I mean, we got the school building down there. That's a nice location physically from the historical concept, but in terms of tourist activity, is it the best location? There's probably a better location to put one. Okay, so you look at all this, and 3 different museums. No, if you're going to do it as top class as you can, and do a good museum.
So
But I also believe the museums need to do a lot of fundraising themselves, because we tried to do it with the Ag Museum, and we didn't even come close to $5 million, so we lowered our expectations.
So you're saying one museum,
One
not
museum.
3.
One museum. Yeah.
Mr. Guetta, any questions?
Not at the moment.
Margo?
I had one, but I think it's been answered. Let me just look at.
You didn't talk water issues.
Huh?
I was going. That's my next one.
Well, yeah.
I was waiting to see if anybody,
Yeah.
if anybody,
Yeah,
if anybody
okay.
asked about your column 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yes, matter of fact, when I walked North City yesterday, and like I said, hit well over 100 houses, and a goodly percentage mentioned the water issue, want to know the status. Because of my letter, and you made the comment, that some activities happening, Bill Young called me up to tell me that the city, for the first time ever, called up the county, wanted to know if there's something they could do to resolve the water issue going out US 1. They were also, as I understand it, talking with JEA about connecting to the water system, to Jacksonville utility system going north. There are several possibilities here of what they could do, but it goes back to 2 issues. One, it was brought out very well by Doug Laidlaw on the television. I don't know if you saw that interview or not. He said, I can only water my yard 2 days a week, and yet the city can pump 200 million gallons of water out of this pipe, and nobody says a word. Over 12 years, 200 million gallons of water. And if where I got that number, I took a 5-gallon jug, put it under the pipe, timed it 10 seconds, 10.1, 5 gallons. At 5 gallons every 10 seconds, it worked out to 200 plus million gallons of water since they opened that line over 12 years ago. Non-stop. They have not shut the pipe off. The city put a meter on it years ago, but they never turned it on, never connected. So Martha Graham's comment, we don't know because we don't meter it, they never turned the meter on or connected or whatever it was. But in the meantime, we're wasting water, and then the city's comment, well, it only costs $1 per 1,000 gallons. It's immaterial. You're wasting thousands and thousands and millions of gallons of water, and nobody cares. But if someone down the street leaves a sprinkler on in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, people go crazy. And so, why are we not solving the problem? And the answer was, we don't have the money. We don't have the money.
So, and we can't take it out of reserves.
And we can't take it out of reserves. Now, in all of this context, what I try to get out to people, it's not Picasso. Picasso's not the problem. It's how are we spending our money to service the needs of the people, to serve the necessities that have to be complied with, to make sure that we provide the best community we can for the residents, the best business environment we can for the businesses. How are we doing that? And the answer is, we're too busy focusing on glamour. And that's my issue with my whole campaign. Let's get back, let's focus on the community, build the neighborhoods, protect the neighborhoods as best we can.
Well, I know you recall this because it's right across the street from the old Hardee's. The city bought that, what was it? Was that a car wash or something?
Yes, car wash.
The city bought the car wash. And the idea is to make it a welcome-looking venue.
Yes.
Or not a building or anything,
Correct.
but just, okay. So entry corridors.
Yes. Mhm.
So have you looked at that plan for entry corridors? I mean, someone like with your background in timber and, understanding better some of those issues of natural resources and things like that. What kind of entry corridor can you put in that location?
That's an excellent question. I supported the purchase of that property because the car wash was an eyesore. So I think it was necessary to improve the entry corridor because that's the starting point. They paid too much for it. They could have got it a lot cheaper, but they didn't. And Norbert's a friend of mine. So I told Norbert, I'm glad you got a lot of money, but the city paid too much. But then you look at people come in, they turn the corner. Okay? Over here they have the ABC, but it's a nicely dressed up ABC with green space. And then they have this little bit of green space here. Then you look straight down King Street, and what's the first thing you see? Power lines. Power lines all the way down. So the entrance could be done very nicely, but you got to continue that entrance through down to the city. So in our King Street issue, we went to the city and we said, in DOT, we want underground power lines because this is the corridor that people coming up from the south will come through. And you've already acquired the corner, so obviously you're thinking about entry corridor issues. Why can't we go to different landscape companies or to Flagler College and say, come up with a landscaping plan to make this little corner, this little triangular corner, not just a park because it's not park space. You can't use it as a park because people can't walk to it. But how can you dress it up so when people come in, they get this feeling, they get the emotion of moving into the historical St. Augustine.
Sense of arrival.
Yeah. And then you continue that corridor by taking out the power lines, putting them underground, you streetscape King Street, and you improve it. The businesses on King Street are dying for that to happen, and they're willing to put up with street issues if they get advanced planning, not 8 days. But we want underground power lines. And then you had the same issue, and I don't know if you looked at the numbers, but going back in 2010, 17,600 cars come down San Marco. 17,000 come in and out King Street. And about 17,200, I think it was, come in off of the Bridge Lines. So it's pretty well equal. You have only 3 entrance corridors, true corridors. We ought to be focusing on improving those corridors into the downtown city and making it so when people come in, it looks nice. It's inviting. You want to stay here and enjoy the city instead of the way some of the corridors do now.
Yeah.
I think underground lines were part of the King Street project. I remember them thinking that they would go into the ground one place.
That's a good thing about that, because if you look at the plan that the city built, I think it was 10 years ago, on the King Street corridor, they talked about underground power lines. when you talk to DOT, the project that they were doing, they were going to rip up the street, which is an opportune time to put in underground power lines. They were going to do their work and close it back up. The city was not involved at all. And when we brought it up to the city's answer, Martha Graham's answer was, we can't afford it. I said, we can't afford it. The ground's already torn up. All you have to do is get FPL to take them off and put them down. Well, they're going to charge too much and we can't afford it. And that was, so the city wasn't involved in underground power lines at the opportune time they should have been involved with underground power lines.
Are there any plans for that property across from that green space entry that you guys own?
The old Hardy site?
Yeah, old Hardy site.
We have offered that property up for marketing and for sale, and nobody's approached us yet. And the logical reason is, as far as visibility for commercial activity or whatever, it is the best, most highly visible location in the city, without question. That and the ABC across the street. The problem is access onto the property and off the property is very limited. Okay, the people who wanted to buy the property, and then there have been numerous people, every 4 or 5 months we want to buy your property, but they want 1.2 acres or 1.3 acres for what they want, and this property is not even an acre in size.
I see.
So the property is small. So you got to find a small user to do it. At one time, there was a company that wanted to buy the corner lot, the old Hardy site, Morrison's Hardware behind it, and Browdy's Liquor across the street. They could not get all three people to come to a price point that they could justify. Okay?
Wasn't there a release that Virginia released before you got married about building a little chocolate factory on that?
She had
Steve.
Steve, I forgot the architect, design a building to put on there, and she was ready to do it. They designed the building. It was going to be a 2-story building, so she could do all of her operations there.
Parking would have been a problem.
Pardon?
Parking would have been a...
Parking was a problem, but they could have worked something out. But the real issue is if the tour buses came in, and the big school bus type tour buses came in, they couldn't get into the property because of the access and so forth. And then they started looking at it, and to be able to do that, they had to downsize the building, and then that made the building too small. So they went to a piece of property north of town and got permission to do out there. And about the time they were ready to start filing permits for that one, the old Cooper Tire Store building came available. And they said, perfect location, they wanted to keep it downtown.
Yeah, people could walk to the store and they could see the factory.
So.
And there's 4 people in this race.
No.
That seems to me to be a challenge to every candidate. So
It is.
What makes you stand out, or what are you doing to make yourself stand out?
We were talking about that the other night. And I appreciate what y'all are doing here. You're gonna put it on, the TV and stuff, or on the website and stuff. There are no forums. City races are like stepchilds. You just don't get coverage. You don't. They're having forums out there for county, for congressional, but you don't see a forum on television or on the city channel 3 or whatever, county channel 3 for the city races. You don't see the forums where you can go out and say to this association. Now, there was a meeting last night, which I regretfully missed because I thought it was tonight, for the downtown people to talk, and a pretty good turnout. But that's the only forum that's been advertised up to this point. Now, there's something at the River House coming up. I don't know who's going to be there, but that's going to be nice. But that's on the 20th, and that's only a couple of weeks away from the election. I've got a lot of issues that I want to talk about. And the only way I can get them out right now is I either spend a lot of money in advertising or I get out and walk the streets, or a combination of both. It's just not that easy to get the word out.
So why should?
Why should they vote for me? I believe they should vote for me because I'm the only candidate that's really focused on the community and the needs of the community as a priority of the way we spend our money. And I'm getting excellent feedback from people. They appreciate the 450th, they appreciate Picasso and all this other stuff, but their bottom line is, I got a phone call yesterday morning, a lady out on Seminole Drive, they have brown water problems to this day. Brown water because the city hadn't fixed it. Okay? And so you look at all these formidable problems, and the only thing that's going to resolve it is money and commitment. So you say, we're going to resolve the brown water, we're going to resolve Maria Sanchez Lake, we're going to fix the waterworks building, we're going to dress up the streets, we're going to do all this stuff, we're going to improve lighting down in Lincolnville, we're going to correct all the sidewalks, but we'll do that after we do the 450th. And if there's any money left, then we'll do it. I don't buy that. I don't buy it. And that's the reason I think people will vote for me, because I'm the only one who's standing up with that voice that other things are more important than the 450th.
Do you have any closing remarks other than that?
I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I hope you got a lot out of this whole conversation and the other conversations from the other candidates. And my only request is, number one, you go vote. And if you vote for me, that's great, but please vote for someone. Make it a good race. I do believe that I'm the only candidate who is focused on the legitimacy of how we spend money and how we protect our communities and enhance our community for our residents and our local businesses. So please consider voting for me, and I thank you very much.
Bruce, thank you so much.